Hare Krishna, welcome to Srimad Bhagavatam class. Before we start our Srimad Bhagavatam class, let's do a simple Mangala Charana. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaim Narottamam Deving Saraswating Vyasam Tato Jayamutirayat. Before reciting Srimad Bhagavatam, which the only means of conquest, let us offer our respectful obeisances to the personality of Godhead, Lord Narayana, onto Nara Narayana Rishi, the supremest human being, onto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and onto Srila Vyasadeva, the author of Srimad Bhagavatam. Nasta Paresha Avdareshu Nityam Bhagavatase Vaya Bhagavate Uttama Sloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistikihi. By regularly attending Srimad Bhagavatam class and by rendering service to the lotus feet of pure devotees, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely vanquished, and loving devotional service onto the lotus feet of Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs and choice poetry, is established in one's heart as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnana Salakaya Chaksunamritanyana Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master illuminated my heart with the torch of transcendental knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimite Japataka Swami Iti Namni Nama Acharya Padaya Nitai Kripa Padayane Gorakadadam Dain Nirgram Tani Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Welcome everyone to today's Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, Chapter 22. Chapter entitled Enumerations of the Elements of Material Creations. So this chapter is about questions, very specific questions asked by Uddhava to Krishna, and Krishna gives very detailed answers. Okay, Uddhava is going to ask 4 questions, but in this chapter Krishna is going to answer only 3 questions. The last question will be the next chapter, which is entitled the Avanti Brahmanas. This next chapter is a very celebrated chapter, very favorite among Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. So please be tuned for next week's class about the Avanti Brahmanas. So today's chapter is about questions asked by Uddhava to Krishna. So let's begin with the first question. Text number 1 to 3. Uddhava inquired, My dear Lord, O Master of the Universe, how many different elements of creation have been enumerated by the great sages? I have heard you personally describe a total of 28. God, the Jiva soul, the mahat-tattva, false ego, the 5 gross elements, the 10 senses, the mind, the 5 subtle objects of perception, and the 3 modes of nature. That all makes up to 28. But some authorities say that there are 26 elements, while others cite 25, or else 7, 9, 6, 4, or 11. And even others say that there are 17, 16 or 13. What did each of these sages have in mind when he calculates the creative elements in such different ways? O Supreme Eternal, kindly explain this to me. So here Uddhava is asking Krishna that in Srimad Bhagavatam, Krishna came in the, if I'm not mistaken, in the 3rd canto or the 4th canto as Lord Kapila Dev. That was the first time we will hear about the Sankhya philosophy. Sankhya philosophy is the analysis of this material world with the view to establish the supremacy of Sri Krishna. So this Uddhava is saying here that the Lord Kapila Dev, he described 28 elements. But there are other sages who are in the mode of Jnana Yogis. Jnana Yogis are those who worship the Supreme Lord with their intelligence. So using their intelligence, sometimes they come up with different categories, different elements that make up this material world. So one might ask, why does these Jnana yogis, those who worship the Supreme Lord with their intelligence, why do they come up with different point of views? The quick and simple answer, the summary to this whole section here is that Krishna will tell that the reason why there is so much difference is because some of these yogis, they are seeing from different point of views. Some of them, they are influenced by the three mode of material nature, the mode of passion, goodness and ignorance. So from different point of view, they analyze this material world, therefore they come up with different arguments. And Krishna says each one of these arguments got their own logic, and according to that logic, it is correct, it is right. Okay? But Krishna explains, my pure devotees, they do not indulge in such arguments, because you cannot get liberation by arguments. You cannot get liberation by mental gymnastics. Okay? So the pure devotees, what they do is they surrender totally to Sri Krishna. And Krishna promises in Bhagavad Gita, he says, those who are devoted to serving me with love and devotion, I give them the understanding by which they can come to me. So this is the mode of the gopis in Vrindavan also. The gopis of Vrindavan, they are not interested in deep philosophy, high philosophy, this and that. They simply want to love Krishna, that's all. So let's see what Krishna says. The answers by Krishna here is extremely detailed. I'll try my level best to give you some idea as to what Krishna is saying. Okay, so let's go. Text number 4. Lord Krishna replied, because all material elements are present everywhere, it is reasonable that different learned Brahmanas have analyzed them in different ways. All such philosophers spoke under the shelter of my mystic potency, and thus they could say anything without contradicting the truth. So Krishna is saying here, these philosophers sometimes with their intelligence and their arguments will be endless, you know. So like I said, now you cannot get liberation by argument. So therefore Krishna says here that these arguments all happen under his mystic potencies. They are under his illusory energy. Text number 5. When philosophers argue, I don't choose to analyze this particular case in the same way that you have. It is simply my own insurmountable energy that are motivating their analytical disagreement. So, in this connection, there's one verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, in Canto 6. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the all-pervading Supreme Personality of Godhead, who possesses unlimited transcendental qualities, acting from within the core of their heart of all philosophies, who propagate various views. He causes them to forget their own soul while sometimes agreeing and sometimes disagreeing among themselves. Thus, he creates within this material world a situation in which they are unable to come to a conclusion. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. So here, this verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Krishna is confirming that he is within their heart, and sometimes just to have fun, he makes them argue among themselves. Text number 6. By interaction of my energies, different opinions arise. But for those who have fixed their intelligence on me and control their senses, difference of perception disappear, and consequently the very cause for argument is removed. This is what Krishna does for his pure devotees. Text number 7. O best among men, because subtle and gross elements mutually enter into one another, philosophers may calculate the number of basic material elements in different ways according to their personal desire. Text number 8. All subtle material elements are actually present within their gross effects. Similarly, all gross elements are present within their subtle cause. Since material creation takes place by progressive manifestation of elements from subtle to gross, thus we can find all material elements within any single element. So this is a very eloquent way of saying that everything that is in this material world is alive and active simply because there is the presence of the spirit soul. So here the spirit soul is referred to as being subtle, the subtle element. The subtle element gives a life to the gross element. Gross element here meaning earth, water, fire, air, ether. Without the presence of the spirit soul, nothing is alive. Everything is dead in this material world. Text number 9. Therefore, no matter which of these thinkers is speaking, and regardless of whether is in their calculation they have included material elements within the previous subtle causes or else within their subtle manifestation products, I accept their conclusion as authoritative because a logical explanation can always be given for each of the different theories. So Krishna here is explaining, if you were to judge everything from a material perspective, there is always an argument for and against for everything. There is a material argument for and against everything. So if you were to analyze everything with the view of argument, only looking at this material world, you will never come to the conclusion, you will never come to the absolute truth. So therefore Krishna is explaining here that the absolute truth can only be given by Krishna to his devotees. So therefore surrender is crucial. Text number 10. Because a person who has covered by ignorance since time immemorial is not capable of effecting his own self-realization, there must be some other personality who is in factual knowledge of the absolute truth and can impart this knowledge to him. So here Krishna is referring to the spiritual master. Text number 11. According to knowledge in the material modes of goodness, there is no qualitative difference between the living entity and the supreme controller. The imagination of qualitative difference between them is useless speculation. This useless speculation, Krishna is referring here to those in the mode of passion and ignorance. Text number 12. Nature exists originally as the equilibrium of the three material modes, which pertain only to nature, not to the transcendental spirit soul. These modes, goodness, passion and ignorance, are the effective cause of creation, maintenance, destruction of this universe. So here Krishna is explaining that material nature's purpose is to always bring about balance, and such balance, this fight to have balance, has got nothing to do with the eternal spirit soul. The spirit soul got no business in this material world. Actually, the spirit soul is just a witness. Okay, text number 13. In this world, the mode of goodness is recognized as knowledge, the mode of passion as fruitive work, and the mode of darkness as ignorance. Time is perceived as the agitated interaction of material modes, and the totality of functional propensity is embodied by the primeval sutra or mahat-tattva. So here Krishna is saying that the modes of material nature, the three modes of material nature, they interact because of the influence of time. Only because of the influence of time can you see that embryos grow within the womb of the mother, gradually comes out, grows up, produces byproducts, dwindles and dies. That is the life. In the absence of time factor, the material elements do not interact and remain inert in the form of Pertain. Pertain is the original source of this material creation, which is actually the abdomen, garbham of Garbhodakasha Vishnu. Text number 14. I have described the 9 basic elements as the enjoying soul, nature, nature's primeval manifestation of the mahat-tattva, false ego, ether, air, fire, water and earth. Text number 15. Hearing, touch, sight, smell and taste are the 5 knowledge acquiring senses, my dear Uddhava, and speech, the hand, the genitals, the anus and the leg constitute the 5 working senses. The mind belongs to both these categories. Text number 16. Sound, touch, taste, smell and form are the objects of the knowledge acquiring senses, and movement, speech, excretion and manufacture or function of the working senses. Text number 17. In the beginning of creation, nature assumes by the mode of goodness, passion and ignorance its form as the embodiment of all subtle causes and gross manifestation within the universe. The Supreme Personality of Godhead does not enter the interactions of material manifestation but merely glances upon nature. So here in this series of verses, Krishna is explaining the interaction between the Supreme Lord and the living entity and this material world. This material world, which he has just described as all these different elements, they in itself got no life of its own. The real purpose behind all this creation is simply because the living entity that is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, and they want to enjoy and they want to become Krishna, they want to become mini lords, they want to become Lord of material nature. So this facility is being created by the Lord simply to fulfill this unholy desire. so that they can finish their business of thinking they are the enjoyer and quickly come back home, back to Godhead. That is actually the real story. And ultimately, everything that happens in this material world is by the cause of all causes. That means Krishna is the cause of all causes. Text number 18. As the material elements headed by the mahat-tattva are transformed, they receive their specific potencies from the glance of the Supreme Lord, and being amalgamated by the powers of nature, they create the universal egg. So this universal egg is referring to this universe. So now Krishna is going to explain all the different kinds of categories, different kinds of arguments. Text number 19. According to some philosophers, there are 7 elements, namely earth, water, fire, and ether, along with the conscious spirit soul and the super soul, who are the basis of both the material elements and the ordinary spirit soul. According to this theory, the body, senses, life, and all material phenomena are produced from the 7 elements. Text number 20. Other philosophers state that there are 6 elements. The 5 physical elements, earth, water, fire, and ether, and the 6th element, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That Supreme Lord, endowed with the elements that He has brought forth from Himself, create this universe and then personally enters within it. So, ordinary living entities is included in the category of the super soul. That is another kind of category. Okay, text number 21. Some philosophers propose the existence of the 4 basic elements, of which 3, which is fire, water, earth, emanate from the 4th, the self. Once existing, these elements produce the cosmic manifestation in which all material creations takes place. This is another way to look at this material creation. Text number 22. Some calculate the existence of the 17 basic elements, namely the 5 gross elements, the 5 object of perception, the 5 sensory organs, the mind and the soul as the 17th element. Text number 23. According to the calculations of the 16 elements, the only difference from the previous theory is that the soul is identified with the mind. If we think in terms of the 5 physical elements, 5 senses, the mind, the individual soul, and the Supreme Lord, there are 13 elements. Text number 24. Counting 11, 3 are the soul, the gross elements, and the senses. 8 gross and subtle elements plus the Supreme Lord would make 9. Text number 25. Thus, great philosophers have analyzed the material elements in many different ways. All their proposals are reasonable, since they are all presented with ample logic. Indeed, such philosophers' brilliance is expected as the truly learned. So here, Krishna is explaining the material world has been analyzed in innumerable ways by innumerable brilliant philosophers. But the conclusion is always one: the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. Aspiring philosophers need not waste their precious time showing off their intellectual brilliance, because there is little left to analyze of the material platform. One should simply surrender to the absolute truth, the supreme element, Lord Sri Krishna, and uncover one's eternal consciousness of God. So here Krishna is saying that we shouldn't waste our time thinking that we can fulfill all our deepest, most desires simply by analyzing this material world. There is a limit as to how much there is in this material world, and the sad truth is, when you discover everything there is to discover in this material world, you will find there is no happiness there. What you are seeking is not there. What you are seeking is at the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. So now we come to the second question by Sri Uddhava. Text number 26. Sri Uddhava inquired, although nature and the living entity are constitutionally distinct, O Lord Krishna, there appear to be no difference between them, because they are found residing within one another. Thus, the soul appears to be within nature and nature within the soul. Text number 27. O lotus-eyed Krishna, O omniscient Lord, kindly cut this great doubt out of my heart with your own words, which exhibits your great skill in reasoning. Text number 28. From you alone the knowledge of the living being arise, and By your potency, that knowledge is stolen away. Indeed, no one but yourself can understand the real nature of your illusory potency. So here Uddhava is asking a very important question. He says here that apparently from what we see with our naked eyes, it seems there is no difference between the matter, the material body, and the spirit soul. According to him, it appears that there is no difference. The body is the soul is the body. So this is actually quite a very important question to answer, because today, in this world today, we have so many varieties of religion and beliefs and philosophy that is based on this idea that there is no soul. The soul is the body is the soul. A lot of atheistic ideas also come from this philosophy, and at the same time, Uddhava wants Krishna to establish what is actually the definition of intelligence. So in the Vedas it says there, one is intelligent when one knows the difference between spirit and matter. That is the very first lesson by Krishna to Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita also. Okay, so let's see what Krishna gives as answer. And by the way, these answers are extremely detailed. You have to read it for yourself to fully understand it. I'll try my level best to explain it to you. Text number 29. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O best among men, material nature and its enjoyer are clearly distinct. They are different. This manifest creation undergoes constant transformation, being founded upon the agitation of the material modes of nature. So here Krishna says this Purusha, the enjoyer, indicates the living entity and also the Supreme Lord, who is the supreme living entity. Material nature, subject to transformation, is full of dualities, whereas the Lord is one and absolute. Material nature is dependent on its creator, maintainer and annihilator. The Lord, however, is completely self-reliant and independent. In the same way, material nature is unconscious and dull, lacking self-awareness, whereas the Supreme Lord is self-sufficient, omniscient. The individual living entity shares the eternal bliss and knowledge of the personality of Godhead and is also completely distinct from material nature. Actually, this is the complete answer right here. But Krishna goes on, text number 30. My dear Uddhava, my material energy comprising the three modes and acting through them manifests the varieties of creation along with varieties of consciousness for perceiving them. The manifest results of material transformation is understood in three aspects: Adi Atmik, Adi Daivik and Adi Bhautik. So here Krishna is explaining that the living entity under the molds of material nature, they acquire different kind of bodies, and these bodies express the nature of this material world. For instance, birds, they glide on the ocean of breeze, whereas fish live within the water, and other creatures experience life within trees or within earth. Human society affords its own variety of awareness, and similarly in heaven and hell different experiences are available, like the devas. All types of material consciousness are transformation of the three modes of material nature. Text number 31. Sight, visible form and the reflected image of the sun within the apparatus of the eyes all work together to reveal one another. But the original sun standing in the sky is self-manifested. Similarly, the Supersoul, the original cause of all entities, who is thus separated from all of them, acts by the illumination of his own transcendental experience as the ultimate source of manifestation of all mutually manifesting objects. So here Krishna is explaining that the Supreme Personality of Godhead facilitates the interdependent experience of all living entities. For example, newspaper, radio and television reveal world's events to the masses of people. Parents reveal facts about life to their children, teachers to their students, friends to friends, and so on. The government manifests its will to the people and the people to their government. The sun and the moon reveal the visual forms of all objects, and the perception of sound reveal audible form. The vibration of particular type of music or rhetoric reveal the inner feeling of other living beings, and other types of knowledge are revealed by aroma, touch, and taste. In this way, through the interactions of the senses and mind with innumerable sense objects, different types of knowledge are acquired. All such information interaction, however, depend upon the supreme illuminating power of the personality of Godhead. Lord Krishna humbly accepts our prayers when we offer it in Krishna consciousness. Lord Krishna clearly explains here that his sublime characteristics are completely different from those of the manifested universe. The Lord is therefore the supreme transcendental entity, free from all material influences. Text number 32. Similarly, the sense organ, namely the skin, ears, eyes, tongue and nose, as well as the functions of the subtle body, namely conditioned consciousness, mind, intelligence and false ego, can all be analyzed in terms of the threefold distinction of sense, objects of perception and presiding deity. Text number 33. When the three modes of nature are agitated, the resultant transformation appears as the element false ego in three phases: goodness, passion and ignorance, generated from the mahat-tattva, which is itself produced from the unmanifested Pertain. This false ego becomes the cause of all material illusion and dualities. So here Krishna is giving, he says that by giving up one's false ego of identification with the three modes of nature, one can achieve Krishna consciousness, the pure original state of existence. Because of false ego, one considers himself to be the enjoyer of nature and thus develops a false sense of material duality in terms of material happiness and distress. False ego is removed by identifying oneself as the Lord's eternal servitor in full Krishna consciousness. Text number 34. The speculative arguments of philosophers, this world is real, no, it is not real, is based upon incomplete knowledge of the Supreme Soul and is simply aimed at understanding material dualities. Although such arguments is useless, persons who have turned their attention away from me, their own true self, are unable to give it up. So here, if one doubts the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one will inevitably doubt the reality of Krishna's creation. Thus, without understanding Lord Krishna, mere arguments and debate over the reality or non-reality of the material world are useless. The material world is real superficially because it emanates from the Supreme Reality, Lord Krishna. Without understanding the reality of Lord Krishna, one can never definitively ascertain the reality of his creation. One will always wonder if he is actually seeing something or merely thinking that he is seeing it. This kind of speculation can never be resolved without taking shelter of the Supreme Lord and is therefore useless. The devotees of the Lord are not inclined to such arguments because they are factually advancing in spiritual enlightenment and are fully satisfied with their progressive, more beautiful experience in Krishna consciousness. Text 35 and text 36. So now we come here to the third question that Uddhava is asking. The third question is actually very much related to the second question. So let's hear what the third question is. Sri Uddhava said, O Supreme Master, the intelligence of those dictated to fruitive activities is certainly deviated from you. Please explain to me how such persons accept superior and inferior bodies by their materialistic activities and then give up such bodies. O Govinda, this topic is very difficult for foolish persons to understand. Being cheated by illusion in this world, they generally do not become aware of these facts. So this question is in relation to what Krishna just explained, those who are bewildered, they think there is no difference between the body and the soul. And these people who are confused, they at the same time also they become very confused when they see they see there's varieties of different bodies. There are some bodies to their calculation is, oh, this is superior. If you were to get a body of a worm, they will think, oh, this is inferior. So this kind of people, all they become very bewildered. So let's see what Krishna says. Text number 37. Lord Krishna said, the material mind of man is shaped by the reaction of fruitive work. Along with the five senses, it travels from one material body to another. The spirit soul, although different from this mind, follows it. Text number 38. The mind bound to the reaction of fruitive work always meditates on the object of the senses, both those that are seen in this world and those that are heard about from Vedic authorities. Consequently, the mind appears to come into being and to suffer annihilation along with its objects of perception, and thus its ability to distinguish past and future is lost. So the conditioned soul is overwhelmed by constant flow of material experiences consisting of direct perception and abstract contemplation of the objects of this world. One thereby loses his transcendental memory of his relationship with God. As soon as one identifies with this world, he forgets his eternal identity and surrenders to the false ego created by Maya. Text number 39. When the living entity passes from the present body to the next body, which is created by his own karma, he becomes absorbed in the pleasurable and painful sensation of the new body and completely forgets the experience of the previous body. This total forgetfulness of one's previous material identity, which comes about from one reason or another, is called death. So here Krishna says death here occurs when the specific karma allotted to the physical body is finished. Since that particular body's karma is used up, it can no longer act upon one's mind. In this way, the one forgets the previous body. Because the living entity falsely identifies himself as the body, bodily death is experienced as death of the soul. Actually, however, the soul is eternal and is never subject to creation or annihilation. Text number 40. O most charitable Uddhava, what is called birth is simply a person's total identification with a new body. One accepts the new body just as one completely accepts the experience of a dream or a fantasy as a reality. So here the term birth does not refer to the generation of a new entity, but to the blind acceptance of the spirit soul of a new material body. Sometimes in Srimad Bhagavatam there is description that all this material body that the soul occupies, it's just exactly like a costume of an actor on stage acting. Sometimes an actor on stage, a male actor on stage might have to wear a woman's dress and he might have to behave like a woman, he might have to talk like a woman. Similarly, an actor who is a female sometimes might have to wear a man's dress, and this woman might have to talk like a man, behave like a man. So this body is just like a costume actually. Text number 41. Just as a person experiences a dream or daydream does not remember his previous dream or daydream, a person situated in his present body, although having existed prior to it, thinks that he has only recently come into being. So the objection may be raised that sometimes when experiencing a dream, one actually remembers a previous dream. So here the sages says by the mystic power of Jati Smara, one can remember one's previous body. So there are some people out there who have this ability, this mystic ability to remember what is their past life. So this mystic ability is not an asset, because you can imagine, this person not only he will remember what is the pleasurable things he did in his past life, but also he will remember the most painful experience of his past life when he goes through old age, disease and death. Can you imagine the anxiety one would have in this present life if he could remember the old age, disease and death of his previous life? So having such a mystic ability is not really a good thing. This Jati Smara is not a good thing. Text number 42. Because the mind, which is the resting place of the senses, has created the identification with a new body, the threefold material varieties of high, middle and low classes appear as if present within the reality of the soul. Thus the self creates external and internal dualities, just as a man might give birth to a bad son. So the reference here of a man who might give birth to a bad son is explained like this. A father maybe by nature is peaceful, but because his bad son gets into trouble, the father is forced to defend his son and considers his son enemies to be enemy of his entire family. Thus, the bad son implicates the father in the troublesome conflict. Similarly, the spirit soul has no intrinsic problem, but by creating a false identification with the material body, the soul becomes involved in the happiness and distress of the body. With this verse, the Lord summarizes his discussion of the difference between the body and the soul. Text number 43. My dear Uddhava, material bodies are constantly undergoing creation and destruction by the force of time, whose swiftness is so imperceptible. But because the subtle nature of time, no one sees this. Text number 44. The different stages of transformation of all material bodies occur just like those of the flame of a candle, the current of the river, and the fruit of a tree. So there's a similar verse in Bhagavad Gita, Dihinosmin yata dehe kaumanam yaumanam jara tata dehantara prapti diharas tata na mutate. The embodied soul passes through from youth, boyhood to old age. Similarly, the soul passes into another body at death. Okay, text number 45. Although the illumination of a lamp consists of innumerable rays of light undergone constant creation, transformation and destruction, a person with illusory intelligence who sees the light for a moment will speak falsely saying, "This is the light of the lamp." As one observes a flowing river, ever new water passes by and goes far away, yet a foolish person observing one point in the river falsely states, "This is the water of the river." Similarly, although the material body of a human being is constantly undergoing transformation, those who are simply wasting their life falsely thinking and say that each particular stage of the body is the person's real identity. Text number 46. A person does not actually take birth out of the seed of past activities, nor being immortal does he die. By illusion, the living entity appears to be born and to die, just as fire is connected with firewood appears to begin and then ceases to exist. Text number 47. Impregnation, gestation, birth, infancy, childhood, youth, middle age, old age, and death are the 9 gates of the body. Text number 48. Although the material body is different from the self, because of ignorance due to material association, one falsely identifies oneself with the superior and inferior bodily conditions. Sometimes a fortunate person is able to give up such mental concoction. So this fortunate person is one who received the special mercy of the Supreme Lord through the transcendental knowledge. Text number 49. By the death of one's father or grandfather, one can summarize one's own death, and by the birth of one's son, one can understand the condition of one's own birth. A person who does realistically understands the creation and destruction of the material body is no longer subject to these dualities. So this verse here answers the argument. One might argue that a living entity cannot remember his presence in the mother's womb, nor his birth and early infancy. This is one argument. Sometimes I have also got, people say, you cannot remember, what happens in the womb or what happens in, when you are still an infant. Well, even though you cannot remember, but with use of intelligence, you can understand that your own relation, your own father, mother, they pass away. Similarly, when we have children, we can see, life goes on by the birth of a child. So similarly, we can summarize that all of this is happening to others around me. My parents are dying and my son is born. So similarly, I also have to go through the same experience. Text number 50. One who observed the birth of a tree from its seed and the ultimate death of the tree after maturity certainly remains a distinct observer, separate from the tree. In the same way, The witness of the birth and the death of material bodies remains separate from it. Text number 51. An unintelligent man, failing to distinguish himself from the material nature, thinks nature to be real. By contact with it, he becomes completely bewildered and enters into the cycle of material existence. A cycle of material existence is repeated birth and death. Text number 52. Made to wander because of his fruitive work, the conditioned soul, by contact with the mode of goodness, takes birth among the sages or demigods. By contact with the mode of passion, he becomes a demon or human being. And by association with the modes of ignorance, he takes birth as ghost or in the animal kingdom. Text number 53. Just as one may imitate persons whom one sees dancing and singing, similarly the soul, although never the doer of material activities, becomes captivated by material intelligence and is thus forced to imitate its quality. We can see this in children. No? Children, when they observe their parents around them, they imitate their parents. Similarly, when we see young teenagers, sometimes these young teenagers, they look for idols, somebody to look up to. And when they find somebody to look up to, they will imitate their idol. This is all very natural. Text number 54 and 55. The soul's material life, his experience of sense gratification, is actually false, O descendant of Dasara. Just like trees, appearance of quivering when the tree are reflected in agitated water, or like the earth, appearance of spinning due to one spinning his eyes around, or like the world of a fantasy or a dream. So the conditioned soul in material life does not perform any activities actually, but rather the material body with the consent of the illusion living entity is being moved by the mode of nature. Merely interactions of the external body with the mode of nature does not constitute real reality. Real reality is that the eternal spirit soul is eternal, full of knowledge and always blissful. It is not temporary, it is not in ignorance, and it is never in misery. That is reality actually. So the challenge of one in the human form of life is to come to this realization and live his life in dedication to the Supreme Lord who has given him a chance to realize this. That Supreme Lord is Lord Sri Krishna. Text number 56. For one who is meditating on the sense gratification, material life, although lacking factual existence, does not go away, just as unpleasant experience of a dream does not go away. One engaging in devotional service of the Lord may be troubled sometimes by the dim reflection of sinful life. One should therefore become strong in Krishna consciousness by hearing the Lord's instruction to Sri Uddhava. That is the only way to escape from this world of illusion, repeated illusion again and again and again. We keep chasing what we think materially can make us happy, but we are disappointed at each time. So the only solution is to take to the lessons that Sri Uddhava is learning from Sri Krishna in Srimad Bhagavatam. Text number 57. Therefore, O Uddhava, do not try to enjoy sense gratification with the material senses. See how illusion based on material dualities prevent one from realizing the self. So if one realizes everything as the property of Krishna, he will see everything as meant for Krishna's pleasure. If he feels no personal anxiety because he is satisfied simply to be engaged in the Lord's loving service. It is not possible to exploit the property of the Lord and at the same time advance in self-realization. It is just like mixing oil with water. It doesn't mix. Trying to enjoy this material world and at the same time making progress in spiritual life, it doesn't go together. Text number 58 and 59. Even though neglected, insulted, ridiculed, or envied by bad men, or even though repeatedly agitated by being beaten, tied up, or deprived of one's occupation, spat upon or polluted with urine by ignorant people, one who desires the highest goal in life should, in spite of all these difficulties, use his intelligence to keep himself safe on the spiritual platform. So throughout history, many of the above mentioned inconveniences have been experienced by devotees of the Lord. One who is advanced in God consciousness does not allow himself to be obsessed with the material body, even in such horrible conditions, but rather keep the mind fixed on the spiritual platform through proper intelligence. So this is the answer of Krishna to Uddhava's third question. So now Uddhava is going to ask the fourth question. Text number 60. Sri Uddhava said, O best of all speakers, please explain to me how I may properly understand this. Text 61. O soul of the universe, the conditioning of one's personality is in material life is very strong, and therefore it is very difficult even for learned men to tolerate the offences committed against them by ignorant people. Only your devotees who are fixed in your loving service and who have achieved peace by residing at your lotus feet are able to tolerate such offences. So this is Uddhava's fourth question, and the answer will be next week's class, the next chapter, which is entitled The Songs of the Avanti Brahmana. If by listening to this class, if you are not really clear and it's not very illuminating for you, make sure you listen to the next week class on this chapter of the Avanti Brahmanas. So here you can see that by Uddhava's questions is very, very illuminating. But you have to understand that these questions by Uddhava is meant for us. These are the questions that I have personally asked, and I have heard many, many devotees ask, and Krishna is giving definitive answers. All these answers will come together in next week's class. So we will meet next week's class. Hare Krishna. Radhe